Should you get coached or should you get therapy? Hi, I'm Tova. I'm a certified life coach. Yes, certified now. I have passed my first qualification. And I'm also a special needs mom, and I used to be a project manager in the city. Today, I'm going to talk about my experiences with being coached and my experiences of getting therapy, and a little bit about which one might be right for you. Now, if you have a severe mental illness that is being treated by mental health professionals, then you should definitely continue with that treatment. They are the best people out there to help you with your mental well-being. When it comes to depression, I think it's more of a grey area or even personal preference. It depends on how you want to work. And maybe a little bit when it comes to trauma as well, though trauma is actually a whole different kettle of fish. So when I have had therapy, the therapy I have had to do with depression. And some of it has been good and some of it has been absolutely disastrous. So I think it comes down to which type of therapy it is, what suits you, who your therapist is. Do you actually work well together? And what you actually want to do. How that comes into coaching is that a major difference between coaching and therapy is that therapy will very often look into your past, look into the reasons why you are feeling the way you're feeling, why you're thinking the way you're thinking, whereas coaching might touch on those, but coaching is much more forward-looking. It's about putting actionable plans in place now for moving forwards. And personally, that really works for me. I really like that. So the therapy I've had that was extremely good was cognitive behavioral therapy, and I cannot recommend CBT enough. I know that there are people out there who hate it, but for me, it was amazing. And actually what's kind of funny is that CBT is in many, many ways similar to coaching, because in cognitive behavioral therapy, you are looking at how your thoughts affect your feelings and behavior, and then thinking about how you can change your thoughts. And we do exactly the same in coaching. And maybe that's why coaching works so well for me as well, because that CBT was amazing and coaching is amazing. And they both have the same kind of idea and theory behind them. You have control over what you're thinking, and what you're thinking affects how you feel and how you behave. And I really like that, and it really works for me. Now, it is 20 years since I did cognitive behavioral therapy, and back then you could get therapy on the NHS for a long period of time, and I actually did cognitive behavioral therapy for a time period of 3 years. And it absolutely changed my life. It was amazing. It was brilliant. When I started, when my therapist was encouraging me to look at my thoughts and try to come up with more helpful thoughts instead, the helpful thought that my brain immediately went to was, oh, for heaven's sake, woman, pull yourself together. Which is not a very helpful thought. It's not very kind. And it took us quite a lot of work to get over this self-criticism that I had in me, this tendency I had to beat myself up. But once I'd gotten over that and I was really working productively with changing my thoughts, it changed everything. It changed so much. And I am really not the same person I was before I started. Like, I can barely remember. No, I can remember, and I was not a happy person. And I'm much, much happier ever since. And as for coaching, the coaching I've done a lot of coaching around my ex-husband, my feelings, and more particularly my thoughts relating to the end of my marriage and my ongoing relationship with my daughter's father. And it has really changed so much, just because I have all of those tools that I learned 20 years ago in cognitive behavioral therapy. I have those to draw on, but I've needed an outsider's perspective on just nudging me out of well-worn thought pathways. And that's, what we do as coaches is we hold that space for you so that you can find those more helpful thoughts that will help you move forwards. And a good coach will ask questions that nudge you out of perhaps the self-criticism that you might be engaged in, or criticism of others. And I was definitely stuck in criticism of others when it comes to my relationship with my ex, that there was a lot of anger and a lot of hurt and a lot of blame that I needed to just shift a bit. And another thing that coaching has really helped me with over this last year and a half, is to deal with depression, to heal from depression. Finding coaching was a huge step in me healing from my burnout depression last year. And I got stuck in depressive thought patterns along the lines of, I am overwhelmed, I don't have time, everything is too much, everything is too difficult. And thanks to coaching, I was able to start examining those thoughts, test how true they really were, find evidence that proved otherwise, and change those thought patterns so that things didn't seem so overwhelming, didn't seem so bleak. And it's been absolutely amazing. I did also get therapy for my depression last year, and it is one of the worst experiences I've had. It was horrendous. It was so bad. I can laugh about it now, but then. And again, I went on the NHS to get therapy for free on the NHS, and I was pushed into a group therapy program. And that group therapy program was very much aimed at people who were immobilized and pacified by their depression. And that was not me. I was not immobilized, I was not passive, I was go with everything, and I felt so overwhelmed. I didn't actually have more to do than I did before I was depressed, but at the time I couldn't handle what I had to do because I didn't have the right thought patterns. Before I was depressed, I was looking at everything that I had to do and went, okay, well, I'll get on with it. And I'll organise my life and I'll organise my time and I will tick things off and I will work at this methodically. But when I was depressed, I was just looking at everything I had to do and going, this is all too much, but I still have to do it. And because the children still need feeding and the house still needs cleaning and Elin still needs caring for, and my business still needed work on, and all of these things just, they kept happening. I never stopped. I never became passive, but I felt so overwhelmed. And this group therapy program, as I said, it was very much aimed at people who were pacified by their depression, and the therapist just kept giving us more and more things to do to get us out of that passive thing, with no concern whatsoever for the just sheer overwhelm that I was feeling. And I asked for a review halfway through, and I said to her, this isn't for me. I leave every session feeling worse than before. This doesn't work. It's not the right thing. And I want individual counselling. I have specific items I want to work on, one being my divorce. And I don't want to do that in this group session where you just keep giving us more and more stuff to do. And she more or less forced me back into the group session and said she would not consider me for individual counselling until I'd done that group, finished it. So I did kind of sit through it, but I was not happy about it. And then, long story short, did not get offered individual counselling after all, but I was offered a different group session. So at the moment, I don't think that the NHS, obviously it depends on where you're based, but where I'm based, the NHS here does not have the resources to offer counselling and therapy in a way that is individualised, that is aimed at the person. Now, if I was to pay for private therapy, that would probably be a very different matter, and I could find a therapist who would work with my circumstances and help me out. But actually what I did find was coaching and coaching tools, and I was able to take those and run with them and work with them. And that's why it has been so good for me. Now, trauma. I mentioned trauma is a whole other thing. Trauma. There are a few things about trauma that makes talking therapy not great. And the main being that trauma is not verbal. Trauma doesn't have words. Trauma is sheer overwhelming emotions to an event or an ongoing set of events. And the more I learn about trauma, the more I learn about nervous system regulation and polyvagal theory, the more I learn through just speaking to people around me, particularly special needs parents. Trauma is a super fascinating topic, and I really like it, and I like working with trauma. But the way that I work with trauma is, I don't know if it's special, I don't know if it's different, it's just, I'm going with what I feel is right. So, first of all, there are trauma experts out there. If you have trauma that you need to work through, go and find yourself a trauma expert. Now, this can be a therapist. A trauma expert therapist can work with you, and there are some amazing ones out there. And if you just want to learn more about nervous system and trauma therapy, then I highly recommend listening to or reading Deb Dana. Deb Dana is one of the leading authorities on polyvagal theory, and I take so much of my knowledge about trauma from her, but she is a trauma therapist, she's a trauma expert. Then there are also alternative therapies to do with trauma, and I myself have done something called the havening technique with a trauma expert, and it is a physical technique to help your body heal from the trauma. And that was actually super helpful. Before the havening technique, if I was talking about Elin's birth, I was recounting it robotically, almost as though it happened to somebody else. I was not in touch with it. There was a lot of feelings in here, and there were words out here, and there was no connection between them. As I say, trauma is non-verbal. But through havening technique, I managed to find a connection, and I can now talk about Elin's birth like something that happened to me, and that was a traumatic and emotional event. There is now a connection between the feelings and the words. And it also means that I can listen to other people's stories about traumatic experiences that left them with a disabled baby, and empathize, genuinely and warmly empathize, whilst not getting sucked into a maelstrom of feelings that I can't handle. It is no longer triggering listening to somebody else's story about it. Whereas before the havening technique, it really was. And another thing that I'm learning about trauma is that trauma doesn't have to be one set event that has happened and is now in the past. And this is quoting a friend of mine, a fellow special needs mom, and she put it so well. She said, "We live our trauma every day. We never get away from it." And that is so, so true. Because our children's needs don't go away. They are at times slightly less, at times quite a lot higher. If Elin is healthy and well, she still needs full care, constant one-to-one care. Okay, I can sit her in her wheelchair and I can turn on the music and she's quite happy there for a bit. But it's not like I can ever leave her to her own devices completely, right? I always have to have my tentacles on her. All of my feelings are on Elin at all times when she's around me, and even when she's not around me. So when Elin has a seizure at night, she has a very specific scream after that seizure, and that scream is the exact same pitch as an ambulance in the distance. And I live on the road that leads down to the hospital. So even if Elin is with her dad, I can be halfway down the stairs before I wake up, because my brain has gone, Elin's screaming, and I'm immediately mobilized and I'm on my way to help her. And I'm halfway down the stairs when I wake up and realize that Elin's not even here and I must have heard an ambulance. Or the other night when she was here and we had a glorious, beautiful night where Elin slept through. She slept so well. Do you know what I did? I woke up at 3:30 panicking because I hadn't heard her. And I had to go downstairs and check that she was still breathing. So for us who live with very, very complex needs children, our trauma never ends. It is ongoing. It happens every day. So how do you learn to live with and how do you learn to deal with that trauma? For me, I think it is looking for the good moments and really focusing on them, as well as knowing that I can handle the bad moments, that I have complete and utter faith in my ability to handle Elin's crises now. So when things are good, I really notice that they are good. And when things are bad, I notice how well I cope. I make it sound so simple, don't I? It's super simple. You just focus on the positive. Yeah, it is how I have trained my brain to think, to focus on those things and not immediately go into meltdown or not dismiss the good stuff. And our brains really like to do that. I've spoken before about the negativity bias. We really like to think about the negative and notice the negative and see how bad things are, but we're not very good at seeing the good stuff. And it's an evolutionary thing. It's there because we need to notice danger. As you know, early humans, we needed to notice danger, but it doesn't serve us as much nowadays. I feel like I've lost my thread on the trauma here. So yeah, therapy or coaching for trauma, you want a trauma expert. Regardless of if you go the coaching route or the therapy route, you want a trauma expert. And even though I love coaching and even though I coach people with traumatic experiences, I would still say if you can find a trauma expert therapist, that is probably a very, very, very good way to go. But if that's not for you, if that's not what you want to do, or you can't find a good trauma expert, then I would recommend working with somebody like me who dares to work with trauma, but who works with trauma in a embodied way, in a somatic way. And this is what I do. I work with calming the nervous system, of regulating your nervous system, because trauma will either throw you into fight or flight, or it will throw you into freeze, dissociation, shutdown. And what I do when I work with people on trauma is getting that upward mobility into your state of calm and centered and connected and safe, so that you have that home in what I call ventral vagal. Do go back to my regulating your central nervous system video if you don't know what I'm talking about. And yes, I am going to do more vlogs on polyvagal theory because I love it and it's fascinating. But finding these techniques that help you move from a state of dysregulation into a state of regulation. And then we don't necessarily talk too much about the trauma. We don't necessarily need to talk too much about the trauma. It is all about helping your nervous system to build resilience and upward mobility to help you cope with traumatic experiences as they happen. The day-to-day trauma of being a special needs parent, or behaviors and thought patterns that are stuck with you from traumatic experiences in the past. We can work on those once you have a central nervous system that feels safe. So, therapy versus coaching, it is up to you. What do you think works best for you? Have you tried coaching and it doesn't work? Then maybe therapy is the best way forward. Have you tried therapy and it hasn't worked? Then maybe coaching is the best way forward. Or you need to try another practitioner. You need to try another therapist or another coach. I am not opposed to having therapy in the future. I probably will have therapy in the future because I still have some issues in my past that I want to work through. But I would do therapy alongside coaching so I get the forward-looking tools and methods and techniques coming with me, because that forward-looking work, that work of changing the now and the future, is so powerful. And I've seen it work time and again. I have experienced it work time and again. So I probably will never fully give up coaching, even if I do also have therapy. Thank you for watching. and I hope I'll see you again very soon. Bye.